Hello, I am Surgeon General, and in this video I will be going over the Impending Doom support gem from Path of Exile, explain how its interaction with Spell Cascade is being changed in patch 3.23, and show methods for working around those nerfs. Building around Doomblast from the Impending Doom support gem has been popular since the changes to the old Doom mechanic in patch 3.20. Specifically, players used curse overwriting with multiple overlaps from Spell Cascade to proc Doomblast at its cooldown rate with very little character investment. This way of building Impending Doom became very popular in 3.21 and in 3.22 in large part thanks to an excellent Pathfinder build guide by Crouching Tuna, which I've linked in the video description. The archetype was able to be played at low investments at league start and scaled well into the endgame. A significant number of players are still using its variants at the end of Ancestors League. However, at the start of 3.22, unannounced changes bricked some of the crucial interactions in the build, leading to a 50% decrease in DPS compared to previous leagues and the inability to proc Doomblast on a single cast. While GGG eventually reverted the change for Ancestor League, they stated that the fix will return in 3.23, meaning that this version of the build will no longer be nearly as powerful in the future. This has led much of the player base to believe that Impending Doom builds are dead. However, in this video, I will show how to build around the Spell Cascade nerfs and enable a playstyle similar to the pre-nerf Impending Doom. To explain how to build around the Spell Cascade nerfs in the future, I first need to demonstrate how Impending Doom with curse overwrite tech worked prior to patch 3.22. Impending Doom is a support gem which deals no direct damage, but triggers a Chaos Explosion Doom Blast when a linked hex skill ends. The definition of ending in this context is somewhat ambiguous, but through testing, players have identified three methods of removing curses. Curses have durations and are removed when that duration expires. Older curses are removed when an additional curse is applied, which exceeds the player's maximum number of curses. And curses from cursed ground are removed when the enemy leaves the ground area or the area is moved by the player. The most popular style of Impending Doom builds prior to 3.23 used curse overwriting. To enable curse overwriting with minimal character investment, players would link their curse skill of choice to both Impending Doom support and Spell Cascade support. Spell Cascade causes linked skills to affect areas both in front and behind of where the player was aiming. For the purposes of this example, I've placed a reticle at the point where the player was aiming when casting the curse linked to Impending Doom and Spell Cascade. Upon pressing the skill button, the curse would be cast in Zone 1, quickly followed by another cast in Zone 2, and a third that would appear off the top left of the screen. These additional casts happened automatically without requiring another input from the player. A critically important part of the build was the large area of overlap between the zones, including the point where the player was aiming. An enemy in this zone would be affected by multiple iterations of their cast spell. This setup alone would not trigger Doomblast though, it would just refresh the duration of the linked curse on each cast. To enable Doomblast, players use the Vixen's Entrapment unique gloves, which trigger all curse spells socketed in them when casting another curse spell. 3 curses were socketed in Vixen's Entrapment along with Spell Cascade. Spell Cascade works the same way on these triggered spells as it does with the self-cast curses shown previously, repeating the triggers in front and behind of where the player aimed. Players would use these 3 curses, plus the curse from their main damage setup in their 6th link, for a total of 4 curses. Players have a starting curse limit of 1, but the Vixen's Entrapment gloves add an additional maximum curse. Taking the Whispers of Doom notable on the passive tree leaves the player with a curse limit of 3 and 4 total curses being used. Since casting 1 curse would trigger another 3, enemies would inevitably be put over the player's curse limit, causing one of them to be removed. By setting up timings correctly, players could ensure that the removed curse was the one linked to Impending Doom, which would cause Doom Blast to be triggered. To demonstrate this, we'll return to the previous example, but now using the Vixen's Entrapment tech and consider what happens to an enemy, or Chris Wilson, who is in the overlap area between Zones 1 and 2. The player aims at or directly behind the enemy and casts the curse skill in their 6 link setup. This starts the cast animation for the curse, but it doesn't go off since it has a cast time. However, since there is no cast time for triggered skills, The 3 curses in Vixen's entrapment immediately trigger, and since they are linked to Spell Cascade, they are applied to all enemies in Zone 1, Chris included. He is now cursed with the 3 curses socketed in Vixen's entrapment. The cast animation for the main curse now completes. Since it is linked to Spell Cascade, it appears first in Zone 1 and affects Chris. He is now additionally cursed with the player's main self-cast curse for a total of 4 curses. But the player only has a curse limit of 3. Therefore, the oldest curse is removed from him. At this point, the repeats from the Vixen's Entrapment Spell Cascade are now applying to Zone 2. All 3 Vixen's curses are reapplied in the second zone, hitting Chris with those curses again. But this would again put the enemy over the player's curse limit. Therefore, the oldest curses are again removed to take the enemy down to the limit of 3. This process has removed the self-cast curse, which was linked to Impending Doom. Since removing the curse counts as it ending, Chris is immediately hit with Doom Blast, dealing damage. Spell Cascade in the main 6 link then reapplies the self-cast curse. Note that Chris's current state is identical to the state he was in at step 3 of this process, enabling a continuous loop. All the player has to do is keep casting the self-cast curse, and Doom Blast will be procced each time there is an overlapping zone from Spell Cascade. The entire mechanic worked because there was an overlap in the center of Zone 2 at the point where the player aimed. This enabled Doom Blast to proc on the first cast of the curse, and multiple times on all subsequent casts due to the overlaps. With the awakened version of Spell Cascade, players were able to get more overlaps to increase the damage per second even further. This brings us to the undocumented change to Spell Cascade at the start of 3.22. Players noticed that Doom Blast would no longer trigger on the first cast of the linked spell, and it was eventually determined that this was due to changes in the overlap zones from Spell Cascade. This graphic shows the behavior of Spell Cascade at launch in 3.22. Note that the overlapping areas between the zones, shown by the green hashing, no longer covers the center of Zone 2, where the player is aiming. This means that when aiming directly at enemies or name-locking on bosses, it was no longer guaranteed that you would apply curses in the correct order to enable the curse overwrite mechanic, and this bricked the entire interaction. Players which had invested their league starts into this type of build brought it to the attention of GGG. Eventually, GGG identified that the change in behavior was due to a bug fix that inadvertently affected Spell Cascade with curses. Since the change was poorly communicated to players around league launch, they decided to revert the change for 3.22 only, but made it clear that the new spacing of Spell Cascade would return in 3.23. Because of this, we know that going forward in 3.23 and beyond, Curse Overwrite with Spell Cascade will not automatically proc Doom Blast multiple times per cast without precise aiming. This makes the build archetype much less reliable for single target damage. So, is Impending Doom dead? Let's return to the 3 methods we can use for ending a curse and triggering Doom Blast. We know we'll no longer be able to rely on overwriting curses. While using Curse Ground support is an option, it requires an extra support gem to enable the mechanic. This is fine for leveling and for early maps, but the loss of a damage support hurts the high-end capability of the build, and it won't be as competitive at the endgame. This leaves us with letting curses expire and being removed at the end of their duration. However, curses generally have durations on the order of tens of seconds. We obviously don't want to wait that long between casting an ability and actually dealing damage. This means we need to stack sources of reduced duration. Fortunately, the alternate quality anomalous Impending Doom causes linked curse skills to have 2% reduced duration per 1% gem quality. By stacking gem quality up to 50%, curses will instantly expire, and Doom Blast will be triggered automatically. This lets you set up the character in a similar manner to other triggered playstyles such as Cast on Crit or Ward Loop. You push the curse duration to 0 or as close to it as possible. You then increase your theoretical maximum damage by making the Doom Blast cooldown as short as possible through methods such as increased cooldown recovery rate. Your DPS is then determined by how quickly you can apply the self-cast curse. This is just determined by your cast speed. Stacking generic increased cast speed or using supports such as Spell Echo will make you apply curses and therefore trigger your damage faster. While this setup will require more character investment in terms of passives and gear than the old curse overwrite method, the end result will be very similar. The primary problem that a build will need to solve is how to get enough quality on Impending Doom support in order to get instant curse expiration. Typically, quality stacking is accomplished by using uniques such as Ashes of the Stars or by linking skills to enhance support. However, notice that both of these specify that they add quality to linked skill gems. Impending Doom is not a skill gem, it is a support, which means that the added quality will not apply. You will instead need to get the quality from generic sources, which are much rarer in the game. The first option is to use the Diala's Malefaction body armor. This unique allows you to disregard socket colors when placing gems in it, and provides bonuses based on the color of the socket a gem is in. Specifically, green sockets will grant 30% quality to any gem in it, including support gems. This, along with the natural 20% quality you can get on skill gems, allows you to easily reach the 50% quality needed for instant curse expiration. The benefits of using this approach are that the mechanic is fully enabled with just this one piece of gear without the need for passive skill point investments. You're also free to use whatever weapons benefit the build the most and can get additional quality on other good alternate quality support gems. However, Diala's Malefaction itself has no stats aside from a small amount of energy shield. Chest pieces are typically a large source of flat life or defensive layers, resists, and spell suppression, so using Diala's will be a defensive blow to builds. Additionally, spell builds using Diala's often socket an Empower gem into a red socket to add 4 or more gem levels to the skill for a large amount of damage. Since Impending Doom is a support, it does not benefit from Empower, and therefore you lose out on that damage scaling vector. Finally, you will need to find ways to stack a large amount of cast speed to apply the short duration curses fast enough to trigger Doom Blast near its cooldown rate. The second option that would provide enough quality to Impending Doom to enable the mechanic is its Ziri's Disfavor. It grants socketed supports 30% quality, which is enough to by itself solve the curse duration problem without other character investment. However, I don't view it as a real option for caster characters, because the rest of its stats are entirely worthless for the build. Being a two-hander, it uses both weapon slots and doesn't provide any gem scaling or the needed cast speed. The Cane of Kulamak is the final option for enabling the instant curse expiration mechanic. This unique war staff drops from Katarina, the final boss of the Immortal Syndicate, and always has 3 veiled modifiers on drop. This build requires a specific unveil, the Katarina mod, which grants gem levels and a small amount of quality to socketed support skills. While this is the only necessary mod for enabling the mechanic, the other 2 veiled mods can also be very beneficial to the build. Take, for example, this version, which includes a high increased chaos damage roll and a large amount of cast speed. Both of these stats would benefit the offenses of Impending Doom. Note that the only non-veiled mod on the cane reads Increased Unveiled Modifier Magnitudes. This mod scales up the value of the unveiled mods, including the small amount of quality from the Katarina mod. With perfect rolls, the cane will grant 15% quality to support gems. Putting together 20 to 23% quality from a corrupted anomalous Impending Doom and the 13 to 15% quality granted by the cane leaves the player at 66 to 76% reduced duration for their socketed curse skill. Allocating the window of opportunity wheel on the passage tree, as well as taking the small nodes leading to it, will grant another 25% reduced duration, resulting in very short durations for poorly rolled canes or instant expiration when using a perfectly rolled cane. As an added benefit, the Cane of Kulamak provides 3 gem levels to Impending Doom, which amounts to more than 30% more damage in most setups. As I have previously shown, it is otherwise very difficult to increase the gem level on Impending Doom. Additionally, Rolling cast speed on the cane significantly helps the player scale their application rate for the self-cast curse. The downside of this method relative to the others is that the cane requires using both weapon slots, so more offensive scaling from dual wielding or defensive options like a shield are not possible. Additionally, the best canes will require very specific rolls, both on unveiling the correct mods as well as divining the quality mod to a high enough level. Since the cane doesn't provide as much gem quality as the other techniques, players will need to path to the center of the passive tree for window of opportunity, and getting the extra quality via corruption on the skill gem is more necessary. Despite these drawbacks, I believe that using the Cane of Kulamak is the best way to build for Impending Doom going forward. So to summarize, in 3.23 and beyond, players will no longer be able to easily cap the proc rate of Doom Blast using Spell Cascade overlaps with very little other character investment. There are, however, other ways to build Impending Doom, so the entire archetype is not dead. Using Cursed Ground support and moving the location of the one maximum area of Cursed Ground is a reliable way to trigger Doom Blast. While this method requires little character investment, its high-end damage will be limited because the Cursed Ground mechanic takes away one potential socket, which could otherwise be used for a damage support. This will be most useful at League start or in low investment scenarios. Players could then transition to a version of the build which stacks sources of reduced duration once required uniques are available. The most straightforward way to achieve this is using the alternate quality anomalous Impending Doom with uniques such as Diala's Malefaction or the Cane of Kulamak. Compared to previous iterations, future builds will need to invest in more cast speed in order to get their curse application rate close to the Doom Blast cooldown, since they will no longer get the 3 applications per cast for free from Spell Cascade. As always, it's my hope that this video has given you some ideas of tech that you can work into your own builds. If you have a clever idea for other build-enabling interactions for Impending Doom, let me and others know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video or are interested in more content of this type or in-depth build guides with an emphasis on mechanics, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support.